So I'm curious, how many of you have experienced problems in the last week of EML? Anybody? Okay. Be honest. So there might be problems coming to the Abbey. There's a full schedule. Probably you'd like to do different things than what's on the schedule, or maybe you aren't so happy with your offering service assignment. Maybe you're on lunch dishes every day for the entire EML. That was my problem yesterday. I've worked with it. Or various things, working with people who are different. They do things differently than you do, or say things differently than you do, or a roommate who snores, or trying to stay awake during the teachings. You know, there are all sorts of things that we can label a problem. Luckily, last spring, last March and April, we had a chance to slowly read through and study this book together, Transforming Problems into Happiness by Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And it's a beautiful book. I started underlining things that were important to me, and I gave up because I just needed to underline the whole book. So, and I had read this book many times. I had read and reread. I had my favorite chapters. And then when we went through this book last spring, I realized, oh my gosh, I've never really read this book. So we went through it cover to cover, and there's so much good advice in here. So it's helpful to begin noticing that as soon as we label something a problem, that contributes to our interpretation of it, our experience of it, how we describe it to ourselves, and then it becomes a problem for us. And I was struck right off the bat, I think it's in the first chapter, when Rinpoche says, the root of the problem, the true cause of our suffering, is not the external being or event that brings us harm, but rather it's our strongly self-centered mind. Okay, we've heard that before, but somehow we had just come out of winter retreat, so the mind was a little more calm, a little more subdued, and this line really hit me like a hammer between the eyes, because he says when we habitually identify things as a problem, even small things like maybe the food is a little bit too cold, you'd like it hotter, or it's a little bit too spicy, or it's too bland, you'd like it to have more spice. Whatever it is, food is such a good example, right? Have you noticed how many thoughts go through your mind just walking to get your food each day? I wish it was this way, it's that way. I wish it wasn't that way. I wish it was different. So what we found in our study together is that when we started looking at how we speak to ourselves, how we describe things, we found we had a lot of problems. We were identifying a lot of things as problems. So that itself is a problem. So it's something a little off about a way a person looks at you, particularly, or a way a person dresses, or something not quite in line with our idea of how things should be. Oh my gosh, nail me to the wall. That was me every day. And so it's quite humbling, quite sobering, but very helpful to begin to identify just how much we're controlled by the self-centered thought, because then we have a chance to do something about it. So self-centeredness is that constant thought in the back of our mind that's saying, my happiness is more important than anyone's, more important than yours, and more important right now. So as Venerable has described, it's like this very myopic telescope that looks at a problem in a very close way and can't see anything else. So we're negating the rest of the world and everyone else's problems and focusing just on what's happening for us. So this label of this habit of labeling things problems makes our mind very heavy and unhappy. Heavy and unhappy. So that eventually, if we keep following those thoughts, and we probably all had moments of this, if we keep following those thoughts, then all appearances arise as the enemy. Have you ever had days like that or moments like that? Our whole view is colored by that self-centered thinking, and then we're very unhappy. So when we recognize that we're the ones who have trained our minds to do this, that's empowering, because now we have some choice. And then we can eventually train to the point where we begin to see all advice, all problems or all situations as advice, like Milarepa. Milarepa was depicted as always having a hand by his ear because he saw everything as a teaching, and that was helpful for him. So one of the things that Rinpoche emphasized right up front was that there's no benefit of labeling things a problem. It seems so obvious, so self-evident, but we continue to label things problems. So it's good to investigate, really take time when we catch ourselves labeling something difficult or a problem or a challenge, to really look into it and see what is the benefit to me to label it this way. See if you can come up with one valid reason. Make a syllogism out of it. This is actually a problem because, seeing this as a problem is a benefit because, and then see if you can fill in a valid reason. I bet you can't find one, actually. So we have to check for ourselves. And then hopefully we can come to the conclusion that there's no benefit. Instead, we can think, actually, this situation is beneficial for me. Now again, we've heard these words, but when you start to discover this in your own life experiences, it's so exciting because it's like finding a new tool. It's like finding something that is such a relief from what we've been doing instead. So instead ask, how is this problem beneficial to me? Now we've all heard Venerable's story about Sam, the macho Italian monk, and it was many months after that situation when she was able to meet with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and he asked her, who's more beneficial to you? Sam, the person who incites your anger, or the Buddhas? And I think Venerable in the early days said the Buddha, right? But Rinpoche said, no, actually Sam is kinder to you because he's the one who's showing you the level of your mind, what the anger in your mind, and then encouraging you, giving you the impetus to begin changing that. So I think all of us probably can think of situations in our experience where we have begun to make that shift and actually see, no, I need this situation. I need this difficult person, or this person I'm labeling difficult, to help me grow in a certain way and to help me develop resilience. So I can think of a couple of instances not that long ago when I was working with someone who I found challenging. And I found my mind, I saw the thoughts starting to go down the familiar path, and I thought, wait a minute, I need this person. I actually need this person in my life to help me develop fortitude, loving kindness, and all those positive qualities. And as soon as I did that, my mind was so happy. So when we can have direct experiences like that, that gives us the encouragement and the impetus to keep going in that direction. But that's a mind training. That takes a lot of mindfulness in those moments to remember, oh, this person is actually beneficial to me. And we can see them as very kind in that way. Another experience that I can recall is that, and this comes later in the book, where Rinpoche says, no matter what disposition a person is showing you, you can still greet them with loving kindness. Wow, that was transformational for me in the moment when I felt like I was on the receiving end. That was my perception of being on the receiving end of someone else's hostility. And I realized I don't have to respond with anger. Instead, I can just look at that person and wish them well, wish them to have happiness and be free of all their suffering. And it makes such a difference. So these are, we might have little habits or big habits of this developing in our mind. We can always go further and further with this kind of mind training. So as long as I see something as a problem and allow it to irritate me, I'm the one who's causing that problem. It's not coming from outside. Again, so empowering to recognize that. So at such times when we're wanting to put the blame outside of ourselves, we're actually seeing ourselves as a victim. Okay, how many of you like to think of yourself as a victim? Probably, oh, you actually do. Well, it may be a habit to see yourself as a victim, but probably none of us like to see ourselves as a victim. But in those moments, we are victimizing ourselves. We're creating that situation as if there's no karma. Karma doesn't exist in that moment. So that, for me, has become another very powerful mantra that I say to myself. Sepal, are you a victim? No. I participated in creating this situation, so I can also participate in changing the situation by changing my own mind. So these are just a few things that I that were particularly powerful for me coming out of studying this book this spring, and so many, many more. So I encourage everyone to have this on your shelf. It's a very good book.